All right, what's going on, everyone? So U.S. President Trump recently signed an executive order freezing all foreign aid for the next 90 days.
I imposed a federal hiring freeze, a federal regulation freeze, a foreign aid freeze. Isn't that nice? We get tired of giving massive amounts of money to countries that hate us, don't we?
And that's what we're going to look into today. What exactly is in those executive orders? We're going to look at some opinions of people who are in favor of this, as well as opinions of those who are opposed to it. I've got a resource for you. You can see exactly how much aid the U.S. has sent, really any country around the world in recent years. And then, of course, we'll talk about what to expect in this regard over the next 90 days. Now, starting out with the actual text of this executive order, it says, quote, "The United States foreign aid industry and bureaucracy are not aligned with American interests and in many cases antithetical to American values. They serve to destabilize world peace by promoting ideas in foreign countries that are directly inverse to harmonious and stable relations internal to and among countries. It is the policy of the United States that no further United States foreign assistance shall be dispersed in a manner that is not fully aligned with the foreign policy of the President of the United States." The executive order called for a 90-day pause in United States foreign development assistance for assessment of programmatic efficiencies and consistency with United States foreign policy. And that is all pending reviews of such programs for programmatic efficiency and consistency with United States foreign policy. In fact, newly appointed Secretary of State Marco Rubio hit on this actually during his confirmation hearing last week when he said, quote, "Every dollar we spend, every program we fund, and every policy we pursue must be justified with the answer to three simple questions. Quote, does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous?" And then the State Department spokesperson, Tammy Bruce, added to this saying, quote, "Secretary Rubio has paused all U.S. foreign assistance funded by or through the State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, for review. He is initiating a review of all foreign assistance programs to ensure they are efficient and consistent with U.S. foreign policy under the America First agenda." Now, according to the Associated Press, they say the last official accounting of foreign aid in the Biden administration dates from mid-December and budget year 2023. In that report, it shows $68 billion had been obligated for programs abroad that range from disaster relief to health and pro-democracy initiatives in 204 different countries and regions. Then CNN added that this cable does provide a waiver for emergency food access and for foreign military financing for Israel and Egypt. The cable does not specifically mention any other countries that receive military financing, like Ukraine or Taiwan, as being exempt from the freeze. I've seen a lot of debate around this in recent days. It looks like things that have already been allocated or kind of out the door are not going to be stopped, but I understand there is still a lot of confusion about what countries are or are not directly impacted. The military financing to Ukraine does not appear, a lot of that's coming through DOD for what it's worth. That does not appear to be impacted, but we have already seen a handful of humanitarian services in Ukraine specifically that have been affected by this. There has already been some pushback inside of the government. NPR reported that just after 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday, the Trump administration placed a number of senior career officials at USAID on leave for allegedly not abiding by President Trump's executive order to freeze much of U.S. foreign aid. NPR said they received a copy of this message that was sent out by Acting Administrator Jason Gray that said, quote, "We have identified several actions within USAID that appear to be designed to circumvent the president's executive order and the mandate from the American people. As a result, we have placed a number of USAID employees on administrative leave with full pay and benefits until further notice when we complete our analysis of these actions." Now, shifting over to some statements in support of these actions, I've got a video here from the Republican senator from my home state of Tennessee, Bill Hagerty, speaking on Fox News.
But I can tell you, back in 2016, 2017, the State Department acted as quickly as they could to shovel money out the door to NGOs, to the UN, to agencies that didn't have the U.S. interest, U.S. best interest at heart. I think it's entirely appropriate that Secretary Rubio put a pause on all of this. I sent a letter to every agency head in the United States government letting them know, line and verse, how they would violate U.S. law if they were to, quote, reprogram funds at the very end. We're going to get a report on all of that here in the next couple of weeks. So I think this is something something that's entirely legitimate. It's something that should happen, and we need to make certain that taxpayer monies are being used for things that advance America's interest.
Yeah, it's a Doge philosophy really across the board on a case-by-case basis, an examination that I think is probably very much long overdue.
Then shifting over, we've got an article here written in the Heritage Foundation by Max Primorik, my apologies in the pronunciation there, where he said, quote, "Unfortunately, foreign aid budgets have grown so large that federal agencies can no longer fulfill their management and oversight duties to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer funds. A powerful and politicized aid industrial complex lobbies Congress to secure ever larger foreign aid budgets and stymie aid transparency and accountability. The U.S. is spending more on foreign aid than ever before, yet the world is poorer, more unstable, and corrupt, less well-governed, and increasingly beholden to our adversaries." He added his 3 key takeaways are, number 1, America's foreign aid programs are failing to advance the national interest. Instead, it is promoting a radical and social agenda overseas. Number 2, we must sizably cut the foreign aid budget, especially humanitarian aid, that has been financing terrorists in Afghanistan, Gaza, Syria, and Yemen. And number 3, we must transition to trade and investment promotion as the true path towards peace and prosperity in the global South. Now, shifting over to the other side of the coin here, some statements of folks that are opposed to this freeze. First, we have Democratic Senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, who said, quote, "Friday's global stop work order on almost all U.S. aid is dumb and murderous. First, this isn't a funding pause. It's a stop work order to almost all aid. Unprecedented. So today, we just stopped feeding babies and housing refugees and mediating conflicts all around the world. Aid organizations are laying off staff and many programs will not restart. Tons of kids are just going to die needlessly. Famine has struck in Sudan, but because of the freeze, our most important life-saving programs shut down. Within weeks or maybe days, malnourished babies who rely on food and care will die. The terrorists will benefit. In Lebanon, our programs help fight against Hezbollah influence. In Syria, our money keeps the ISIS prison camps operating. If there's no winter fuel in those camps, there could be a riot that leads to a breakout from the camp. Aid programs are told to apply for waivers, but it's a joke. There is no waiver program, no one to review the waivers. It's just cruel, busy work to further overwhelm and punish aid agencies, because cruelty is also the point. That primarily helps China, who is increasing its aid programs as we disappear. And then turning to a statement from Interaction, one of the larger alliances of non-governmental organizations here in the United States. They said, quote, "The recent stop work cable from the State Department suspends programs that support America's global leadership and creates dangerous vacuums that China and our adversaries will quickly fill. This halt interrupts critical life-saving work, including clean water to infants, basic education for kids, ending the trafficking of girls, and providing medications to children and others suffering from disease. It stops assistance in countries critical to U.S. interests, including Taiwan, Syria, and Pakistan." End quote. And then Abby Maxman, the president and CEO of Oxfam, which is a British non-governmental organization, said in a statement to ABC News, quote, "The aid community is grappling with just how existential this aid suspension is. We know that this will have life or death consequences for millions around the globe as programs that depend on this funding grind to a halt without a plan or safety net. This decision must be reversed, and funding and programming must be allowed to move forward, but at the very least, the administration must communicate clearly so the aid community can plan for the future and determine how to carry on our life-saving work." All right, so I mentioned a resource if you want to look into where the United States is spending foreign aid money around the world. That's this website here, foreignassistance.gov. It'll be linked in the description below. It's actually a pretty effective website for the government. It's like a lot of data here, and it works well. It's not crashing randomly, which is always a positive. But I've got this set for 2024. I was going to zoom in on Gaza and the West Bank just to give you an example of kind of the data sets here. So that broke it out to $250 million in disbursements in 2024 to Gaza and the West Bank. It breaks it out, humanitarian, health, program, economic development. And then when you scroll down, you can actually get into the exact activity and kind of double click into, the amount and what's being spent and where. So, amidst this whole conversation, if you want to check that out, be sure to give it a look. All right, so in terms of what to expect in the coming weeks and months, first and foremost, the big number here is the 90-day window that the executive order laid out for all agencies to comply with essentially an audit to be able to show where all of their foreign aid money is going, and then ideally be able to identify any waste, fraud, or abuse that could be cut from that budget. The other thing to watch for here are the waivers. I know Senator Murphy mentioned that doesn't really exist. There's not really a waiver process. We'll see if there is actually a waiver process in place. I would expect that we are going to see a ton of those flowing in. I mean, just put yourself in the shoes of anybody who's overseeing one of these programs. I'd find it very unlikely that a lot of them are going to raise their hand and say, yeah, mine's actually not that important. Right? It probably puts their jobs at risk. So I would expect that we are going to see a lot of waivers submitted, and probably some of those that will actually go through. I mean, again, we're seeing things right now. The ISIS prison camp guards is a great example. Let's pay those guys. Let's find a way to make sure that they keep those gates closed for now, and we don't have to deal with a possible ISIS prison break in Syria. Not just when Jolani's getting on his feet, but anyways, look, if you've enjoyed this type of content, please consider liking the video, leaving a comment, and letting me know what you think. It's a little outside the normal national security, Ukraine war, Gaza, Syria type stuff I cover. But again, kind of getting some inspiration from the old newsletter. Flip side, I thought it could be interesting to dive into some of these national security, foreign affairs type subjects and provide, as best I can, viewpoints both in support and in opposition of whatever the thing is that day. So in this case, the foreign aid freeze. But anyways, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.